Hello everyone, welcome to the Bracing Expert Training session on the Aircast walker. So we hope you enjoyed and found value in the earlier plenary session on Achilles tendon disorder. So my name is Lorraine Dupuis. I'm the International Marketing Director for Bracing, and I'm very happy to serve as the ongoing moderator for this educational webinar. We have around 60 participants from across Europe and APAC attending today's session. We very much appreciate the time you have spent to be with us. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping points to touch on. So during the presentation, questions can be placed into the chat box feature on the right side of your screen. So we encourage you to use this chat box features. All chat and questions are set to private. Questions will be collected and answered in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar, starting in around 50 minutes. The webinar is being recorded as well, and a link to the replay of the session will be emailed to you within 3 working days. I also wanted to acknowledge the effort of those who help us make this training possible. Adam, Francine, and Demos have been working diligently to ensure smooth delivery of today's content. So without their dedication and hard work, it would not have been possible. So during this 1-hour webinar, Demo, Market Manager of Bracing and Surgery for DJO Nordic, will share his knowledge and expertise on the Aircast walker. He will go through the competition and give some tips to overcome the most common sales objection. After Demo's presentation, we will have a 5-minute comfort break, after which Francine will take us through the essential of evidence-based solution selling, taking 2 examples. So how can we shift the dialogue beyond product features and benefits and enable deeper discussion with clinicians and other decision makers. We have pre-recorded all these sessions, and I will be joined at the end by Francine, Crystal, and David to answer your question. So now I will give the floor to Demo, presenting the Aircast walker, how it performs against our top 3 competitors, and how to overcome sales objection. Thank you.
So the Airselect walker is the market-leading walker with its strong Aircast brand. It's been clinically proven to work effectively in treating Achilles tendon ruptures, and it stands great against traditional casting and the competitive walkers out there. The integrated inflation system ensures a perfect fit without the need of a separate handball, and the multiple individually adjusted air cells just ensures a customized fit, and has been shown to be superior to the single inflation point which most of the competitors have. The low profile sole enables a normal walking gait without much hip differential, and it is among the lightest pneumatic walkers on the market. The rocker sole is designed with 4 different sections: the heel strike, the mid stance, the rock through, and the toe off, to mimic natural gait and prevent knee hyperextension. And finally, the shock absorbing sole, the soft strike technology, absorbs the energy at the heel and reduces the risk for heel pain. So the Airselect range consists of 3 different walkers. 2 of them are more appropriate for treating Achilles tendon disorders, which I will be covering now. So the first one is the Elite Walker, the premium model of the Airselect family, which has the integrated inflation system and has 4 separate air cells, where 3 of them are individually adjusted to offer a true customized experience. It also has the duplex technology, which consists of 2 overlapping air cells, both medially and laterally, to offer an intermittent compression and reduce edema 3 times faster than a single air cell. And this has been clinically validated. The Elite model also has a rigid front panel with a separate air cell to help immobilize the limb even better, and this can be important for fractures, etc. The enclosed toe cover is also specific for the Elite version, and that protects the toes from hazards. And you always get 2 cotton socks included in the Elite version as well. The AirSelect standard model is the standard walker in the AirSelect family. It has the same integrated inflation system as the Elite walker, but with the difference that it has 2 individually adjusted air cells. It has the same rigid posterior shell as the Elite version and the same shock absorbing sole, but with the difference that it has a more flexible front panel and a wraparound liner. And although it doesn't give the same rigidity and stability as the Elite version, most would say that it's definitely enough to treat Achilles tendon disorders with. And of course, the key here is the more attractive price to target more price-sensitive customers and markets. When treating Achilles tendon ruptures, we need to place the foot in an inclined position. So to place the foot in equinus, we use the Aircast heel wedges. They come in right and left for anatomical and comfort purposes, and it's important to check that the correct side is chosen. In each bag, there are 5 wedges in different sizes, and the appropriate 3 should be chosen to place the foot in the correct angle of 22 degrees of plantar flexion. And finally, you need to stick the wedges together to prevent misplacement. A few key things here to make sure you get the customized and perfect fit. The correct size of the wedges is determined by the size and length of the foot. The inclination angle is determined by the height difference between the hindfoot and the forefoot. So the wedges should support as much of the arch as possible without going beyond the ball of the foot, as that will affect the inclination. In the picture here on the screen, you can see a poor example where the wedges go beyond the ball of the foot, which results in an inadequate inclination angle of the ankle, and only tilts the toes in this case. Another mistake in this middle picture here is the wedges are placed on top of the soft insole. So the wedges are really dense and uncomfortable to walk on, and the reason is to prevent the wedges from compressing and bottoming out when walking on them, just to maintain the right angle. But to make sure it's comfortable for the patient and prevent heel pain, you need to remove the softer insole in the walker and place that on top of the wedges once they're placed in the correct position. You can also see on the right picture here that the posterior shell is both trimmable and also heat moldable to make sure you have a proper fit, and that goes especially for larger calves. And the windows on the posterior shell can also be used to check the air cells that they are appropriately filled with air. And finally, I just want to cover the most common accessories in our portfolio. The shoe lift is placed on the contralateral foot and reduces the height difference, especially in the beginning of the treatment when you have the 3 wedges. That can be really helpful. The weather cover for raining conditions, it only covers the upper part of the walker, not the sole. The brace lock is a neat little tool for a doctor who doesn't want the patient to remove his walker for a specific period of time. And then finally, the hygiene cover is used indoor just to cover the walker and not bring in the dirt from outdoors. All right, so let's move on to the competitive analysis. Here I have selected 3 main competitors which have been pushing their walkers hard and hurting us in a number of markets. I will analyze and compare features and benefits and hopefully give you some more claims to use towards your teams and customers. So first up is the Usher rebound walker that has been around for a while now, and although it hasn't been a global success, some markets have been challenged by it. 2 key features that are important to be aware of and build your discussions around are the single inflation point on the rebound compared to the AirSelect's multiple inflation points and individual adjusted air cells. Always mention the duplex system when talking about the air cells and how that is superior to the single air cells. In the rebound case, with the inflation point, there is no ability to customize and fit or customize the fit, and there is a risk of the air cell bottoming out on one side, creating pressure on the leg. Another key feature is our balanced rocker sole that allows for stable and natural gait. These 2 walkers were involved in a study published by Riches et al. In 2016, where they looked at the mechanics of the lower limb and how the walkers affected that. And it was found that the rebound walker produced greater gait deviations and potentially harmful hyperextension moments on the knee. Next up is the Breg Bledsoe Genesis walker, a true knockoff where they really tried to copy the AirSelect walker, but failed in a few areas. Similar to the rebound walker, it has a single inflation point linked to air bladders with the mentioned disadvantages. It also has a narrow sole, which results in instability, and it also lacks a balanced rocker sole with these different sections, which creates a much more balanced and natural gait. Last up is the Oped Vacuped Walker with its vacuum concept, creating this total contact cast effect. There's been concerns about the microbeads that can provide uneven pressure, which could lead to sores, pulling of edema, and ulcers. There's also been concerns about the rocker sole, which doesn't have the different sections allowing for a natural gait, and potentially creating these harmful hyperextension moments at the knee. There's also been concerns about the interchangeable soles that the Vacuped has. There's been cases where they've been falling off, creating hazards for the patients. And the last and main point, I think, why they haven't been more successful than on a global level is the price tag. It's twice as expensive as the AirSelect Elite, and most markets are not ready to pay that amount for an Achilles tendon walker. But we see in a market like Germany, where it's reimbursed, they've taken a lot of market share, and they're really hurting us. And I really think it's a good product. They have an innovative and smart technique, and a good go-to-market strategy. So we really need to be aware of it, and have that in mind as we're continuing to develop our walker range. So let's continue to objection handling. I've picked out some common objections from customers, which we need to be able to respond to. But just bear in mind that this is an old sales model, the Air model. Let's not just jump into defensive respond mode. So I think that this is always good to keep in mind when handling objections. First thing we need to do is acknowledge what the objection is, investigate, ask some follow-up questions to make sure that we understand the objection, and then respond. So first up is the price objection. In price sensitive markets, the AirSelect range, especially the AirSelect Elite, is an expensive option, and we just need to be aware of what we're up against in that specific market. So we need to know the competitors, their pricing level, and also their offering, their features. But I would say in all markets, no matter what market it is, we should focus around two main points, and that's the clinical data. We know where we are in a position where we have the most clinical data on our product, and most of the competitors don't have any clinical data. So we have a huge advantage there, and that is of course linked to what Francine was telling us about the evidence-based selling. That just puts us on a different playground and on a superior level. But also our key differentiators, our patented features, our unique features, like the multiple individually adjusted air cells, and of course the duplex system. The next common objection is that we've had the Air Select range. We launched that in 2014, so we've had it for a while now, and some customers would consider it an old product. Again, let's just investigate. Let's just find out what they mean by an old product and what they are requesting. Sometimes they would just request some updates on the color or whatever, and then we don't even need to go into defensive mode and start protecting our product. Other than that, I think we need to push the legacy of the Aircast. We've been around for a long time. The Aircast brand has been around since the 70s. The legacy, the proven record of the product on the Air Select, I mean, that's 7 years of success, because we're still the global market leader in walkers, and that tells you a lot. But I also think we need to remind them that we've been doing updates on the current Air Select range. We've updated the air cells, the pump, the dial, the straps. So although it's not showing that clearly on the final product, we've actually done throughout these years, we've done some important and significant updates. Next up is the breathability, and that is that's a tough one. I've heard from a lot of markets where using our walker is just become so hot and sweaty inside the walker, and we've had some issues with tissue breakdown and so and we have to acknowledge that it is a challenge, especially as the structure of the walker. We're embedding the foot in plastic air cells, which are really not breathable. But I think it's important to also talk about the procedures and routines that we do recommend that patients are removing the walker daily, both to get some to get some air on the foot, but also inspect the foot. And most of the patients that are having an Achilles tendon rupture, they're in the middle age, and they're more than capable of removing the walker and putting it on again. So that should not be an issue or a concern. But I also think it's important to inform the customers about the type of sock that is used in the walker. We do have a few different socks that we can offer. So we have the thicker cotton sock that is included in the Air Select Elite, but we also have a thinner polyester sock, and they do have advantages both. I think the thinner polyester sock is obviously thinner and cooler, but it doesn't absorb moisture, it doesn't absorb sweat as well as the thicker cotton sole. So in many cases where I've been involved, they've actually they've been using the thinner polyester sock during the summertime, but they've experienced these problems with the patient tissue breakdown, etc. And once they've changed to the thicker cotton sole, that has actually improved because of the sock and its ability to absorb the moisture. As long as they've been changing the sock, ideally on a daily basis, they've kept the foot dry and well. So I think that's a topic as well to discuss. The next point here has been about the range of motion. So range of motion in the actual walker during walking. So when they've wearing the walker, and there's actually no data supporting the pros, the benefit of having that. What we do see and what is what's shown in the studies is that early weight bearing is beneficial, and also exercise. So movements are good, but they can be without the walker. When you're at your physio or doing it at home, you're doing your movements, but not necessarily in the walker when walking. And I do know that there are competitors that are having that. They're integrating that in the walker. For example, the Vacuped have a slight range of motion movement in their structure, and I definitely think it's something we should be thinking of with our next generation walker, if we can combine it. But for now, we can definitely respond to the doubters that it's not affecting the outcome. We haven't seen any data on that. As long as they get the early weight bearing and following the exercise scheme from the physio, we do get good proven results. And the last objection point here is on the equinus, so the actual angle of the ankle in the walker. And this one, for now, if you get that objection, I think you should just acknowledge it and say that we're working on it. I'm gonna swap to the next slide here. So this objection started with a study that was published a couple of years ago here, and the question here was basically, do the walkers, do they produce the required equinus? And it was shown that not all walkers do that, and a few follow-up white papers and tests have been made that also shows that the current wedges that we're using with the plateau they're not that effective in placing the ankle in enough equinus because of the calcaneus is not tilted. So you're basically just tilting the midfoot and forward, and that's why we're currently working on a next generation heel wedges that you see in the middle without that plateau, and that is currently worked on, and hopefully we will be launching that by the year end. Linked to this objection as well, I think then we can and also linked to the old product objection, I think we can turn that into our current project of the next generation Achilles walker, which is still in an early stage, but I still think it sends the right signals that we're working on it. We're the market leaders today, and we're planning to be tomorrow's market leaders as well by continuing developing state-of-the-art products.
Okay, Dimo has brought us a lot of interesting and valuable information about the AirSelect Walker. Really, we encourage you to use also the chat box feature, ask question or share your opinion on the chat box. So now we will take a 5-minute break, after which Francine will take us through the essential of evidence-based solution selling using 2 examples. One is a randomized control trial, and the other will be a systematic review. So what are the clinical selling skill and information needed to provide the customer experience that healthcare providers expect? Please stay connected and see you in 5 minutes.
Hello again. In the previous session, we covered the theory of evidence-based solution selling, and now it is the purpose that we will apply what we learned to some actual clinical studies. So I will give two examples. One is a randomized controlled trial, the other one is a systematic review. So assuming we want to present this study at a visit to our healthcare provider. First example is a study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine from 2020 by Barfoot et al. It is on Achilles tendon rupture, conservative treatment, and the study compares an early controlled motion protocol with an immobilization protocol. The early controlled motion protocol first example is a study which was removable, so patients had to remove them daily for doing controlled exercises. And this controlled motion started at the beginning of post-op week 3. So in the comparison group was 8 weeks immobilized, also with air select walker, but sealed, so not removable. So let's start with step 1, formulating the clinical question using the PICO principle. So the P for patient, the patients have here Achilles tendon rupture, and they are between 18 and 70 years old. The intervention is conservative treatment with early controlled motion from day 14 in a removable air select walker. And the comparison is conservative treatment with 8-week immobilization in a non-removable air select walker. Outcomes. The primary outcome is functional recovery measured with the Achilles tendon rupture score, and then there are secondary outcomes like tendon elongation and resting angle, re-rupture rate, calf circumference, return to sports, to work, and also complications. So our clinical question here could sound as such: in conservative management of acute Achilles tendon rupture, does a rehabilitation protocol with early controlled motion using a removable walker improve functional outcomes, tendon properties, and return to work or sports compared to a traditional immobilization protocol? And is there a difference in re-rupture rate? So step 2 in evidence-based medicine is then finding research evidence. We, of course, already had pre-selected our study that we want to present to our healthcare provider, but should we do a search using keywords from our clinical question, like displayed here at the left side, and we do this search on PubMed, applying a filter on randomized controlled trials and also on studies from 2020 to 2021, we would get 4 search results, and the study we are discussing here now is the first one in the row. Then step 3, critically appraising the evidence. Like I mentioned earlier, this is an important step because our healthcare providers want to be sure that the study we are presenting is not biased. So this is about the validity of the study, and also that the results we are presenting are significant, so did not happen by chance and are reproducible. Validity is about the design and the methods of the study. Statistical significance is more about data analysis. So first, the validity, the journal. This study has been published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, which is a high-impact journal. It is a very high-quality journal. It is also in the first quartile in the Scimago journal ranking, so it belongs to the top 25% journals. Then baseline characteristics are nicely mentioned in a table. The randomization and blinding are specified, so we can see that not only the patients but also the assessors were blinded, so it's a double-blind control trial. Further, some details about the randomization. It was computer-based and the groups were well balanced. Then also is mentioned that there were no conflicts of interest. And regarding the follow-up, we can see from this flow diagram that 130 patients had been randomized in the beginning of the study, And the researchers used an intention to treat analysis, meaning that all patients that have been enrolled, also the dropouts, have been included in the final analysis. This is the intention to treat. And then next to that, they also did a per protocol analysis. And this means that they also did an analysis not taking into account the dropouts. So there is a detailed description of the statistical methods used to analyze the data. We don't understand yet all the terms used here, but we can see this where there was this intention to treat analysis. They did between group comparisons, and then the significance level was 0.05, and the data were analyzed at 1 year follow-up. Then regarding the statistical significance of the results, for showing this to our healthcare provider, we will again highlight details in the full text of the study and also in the tables. As an example, I mentioned here two tables. One is showing the results on the Achilles tendon rupture score. The other is showing the results for the return to work and sports. And the tables show that between the groups there is no statistically significant difference. So all the p-values are greater than 0.05, actually greater than 0.3. So not statistically significant. And then in step 4, you can discuss the clinical relevance with your healthcare professional. So the relevance to his practice and to his patients. You can do this by having a closer look at the subgroups in the study, looking also into the details of the baseline characteristics to see whether the subjects of the study have similarities with his patient population. It's also interesting in this step to highlight specific interesting quotes in the discussion that you want to discuss with him. Then for the next example, we need to be short, otherwise we will run out of time. This is now a systematic review with meta-analysis, and basically they have investigated the same topic as the randomized controlled trial we discussed. So also conservative treatment of Achilles tendon rupture and comparing a protocol with early weight bearing and early motion in a functional walker with a protocol that uses immobilization. So step 1, the clinical question using the Prickle principle. The patient problem here is Achilles tendon rupture. Patients are older than 16 years. The intervention is conservative treatment with early weight bearing and ankle motion. The comparison is conservative treatment with non-weight bearing and ankle immobilization. And the outcomes, the primary outcome measure is the re-rupture rate, and there are a lot of secondary outcome measures. So based on all these items, we can again formulate our clinical question, which could sound like this. In conservative treatment of patients with acute Achilles tendon rupture, is a rehabilitation protocol with early weight bearing and early motion using a walking brace safe with regard to re-ruptures, and does it yield better functional recovery and earlier return to work and sports compared to a traditional protocol with non-weight bearing and immobilization? So step 2, finding research evidence. So same here, we already had chosen our study that we want to present, but when we would do a search on PubMed using keywords from the clinical question and then put the appropriate filters, our study we are discussing now is in the search results, and well, it is on the first place. In step 3, we will critically appraise the evidence, so we will evaluate the validity and also the statistical significance. So first of all, we are discussing a systematic review with meta-analysis, so this means we are already at the top of the pyramid. But for critically appraising a systematic review, there are also some specific criteria. I will not go into detail of the criteria here because this would take too much time. But of course, when it's about the validity of a systematic review, it's not only the validity of the review that is important, but also the validity of each of the included studies. So the included studies also may not have bias. So also for the systematic review, all aspects relating to validity are well described. The review methods, the randomization and blinding. There is a detailed description of the inclusion and exclusion criteria, a detailed description of the search and search terms. The journal, again, is a journal with a good impact factor and also in the Q1 ranking. There is also a description of the primary and secondary outcomes, so all aspects well described. And the study also shows a detailed table of all the baseline characteristics of the included studies and within the studies of the patients and the protocol they used. Again, also a good description of the statistical methods used in this review. They mentioned that they used methods described in the Cochrane handbook, which is always a good reference. So, and then there is also the details on the statistical significance. What we are looking at here is called a forest plot, and this is a common way to represent results of a meta-analysis. I will not go into the detail here, but a forest plot always has a line in the middle, and then on one side are the pooled results of the studies that favor the intervention, and at the other side are pooled results of studies that favor the control groups. So we can see here that most of the studies are a little bit at the left side, favoring the intervention, but the statistical analysis shows that the p-value was greater than 0.05, so that all the differences between the groups were not significant. This is what we learned from this table, well, basically. So this brings us to the end of this practical example. I hope this made all the theory a little bit more clear and tangible for you. So in future trainings, we will further go into some more details that are relevant, like how to read a clinical paper, study designs more into detail, understanding then basic aspects of data analysis, subgroup analysis and comparison, and also some statistical terms. We can go deeper into possible scenarios for the last step, step 5. And we will maybe try already to apply this concept on an upcoming product launch. So let me hear your feedback. You can use my email mentioned below, also if you have questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Francine, for your clear explanation. Yes, the two examples were very interesting and useful. We now have a better picture of evidence-based solution ceiling. So before we start the Q&A, I would like to welcome Francine, Crystal, and David. So we are privileged to have them as our guest speaker for this next Q&A. Dimo could not attend as he is on holiday. So Francine is the International Clinical and Education Project Manager. Crystal Chan is the Director of DJO Asia Pacific Export Region, so including a dozen markets in Asia. Crystal started Aircast Asia Pacific back in 2005. The best-selling product is the Aircast Worker, so she can really share with us her experience and knowledge. David has a clinical background as an orthotist, working in England, New Zealand, and Australia. He started as a rep at DJO almost 8 years ago, and have in the last year been in a supporting role looking after bracing in Australia. So yes, I was looking, yes, maybe I had a question. David, is can you talk about another important area, which is not just Achilles rupture, but use of our AirSelect workers in those with Achilles tendinopathy or Achilles tears?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I suppose I can talk about this specifically because last year I was actually training for a marathon and got a grade 2 tear of my Achilles and ended up in a boot for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, fairly full time. With a raise, I used a heel wedge that I'd actually made to actually put in there. I also did lots of treatment. My physio gave me about 5 to 10% chance of running the marathon, but I ended up running it. I used a laser, shockwave, all the classic DJO uses. But I think it's a really important area that we should never really forget about. We talk a lot about Achilles ruptures and the use of air select walkers, but there's also a really large cohort of patients that are either Achilles tendinopathies or Achilles tears, and therefore it's just a comfortable choice. I found it extremely comfortable. I am 6'5", so I did have a few arguments with a few door frames, unfortunately, because it really does raise you up a little bit. But I put another wedge inside my running shoe, so I didn't have too much issue with that. And it was summer here as well, and I didn't find it too hot. I was wearing shorts. Obviously, you get a lot of heat around that leg area, but it kind of dissipates once you get used to it. So it's not something I've necessarily come up with personally or in the sales, the heat issue, even though Dino did talk about it in quite a lot of detail there. And we obviously live in a very hot country. So the use of air select walkers, I would promote it, especially for anyone who wants the best for longer term use. For those with significant injury or where a small amount of movement could exacerbate the injury, I think the air select walker is and always will be one of the best on the market, and we should be promoting that fact. I'm not saying go out and get yourself a Achilles tendon issue, but it is quite good to have experience with using our equipment personally, and then you can go out and as a sales rep and really have some personal recommendations about a particular walking brace. Any other questions? You frozen there?
Yes, and Crystal, can you share your experience in APAC? What is the most common sales objection? Do you have some other sales objection, and how do you perform against your main competitor? Do you have the same competitors than what Dimo review?
Yes, exactly the same ones. But I think Aircast outperform the competitors so much. So, and Dimo already. And also Francine already well covered all the clinical aspect, and I think it's the strong clinical support that we have. And I also want to, add that I think the Aircast walker, especially for Achilles and the crowd cuff ankle combination, is the best kept secret. In the very old days, in Aircast brochure, we always had the two together. And it's not talked about that much now. But Game really had a paper on crowd compression, crowd therapy with IPC. That's their selling point for Achilles. So although it's a competitor paper, but it really gave all the mechanism. And I think we should sell more on the combination of the Aircast and the crowd cuff ankle. So you get the crowd compression, you get the IPC effect, you get the walker protection, and that's just the perfect story of doing police, whether it's conservatively or post-op. And you can do the same thing with the VenaFlow. So we had a Taiwanese surgeon, sports medicine surgeon. He shared his experience and pictures that how he combined the three to achieve the optimal loading. So yeah, I know a lot of this webinar is a lot of distributors. So I think we should promote that more.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. We had one question from Andre, to David. Which Air Select walker have you used? Is it the Elite or the Standard?
Yeah. I did use the Elite. I had a large at home, so I managed to get a good stability, and I was really made myself wear it consistently. I didn't wear it while lying down, but when I was walking, I wore it consistently for about 2.5 weeks. That was just a personal experience with using the Air Select Elite. I found it very supportive. I found it comfortable, and I was able to make sure I was quite even on the other side. I know there's some clinics that actually add the wedge to the heel. So that's another sort of suggestion we can make, especially with our orthotics or prosthetics companions. It's the Air Select Elite is definitely my brace, my walker of choice for sure.
Okay, and another question from Andre. Do you think the Elise is much more suitable to be worn with wedges compared to the standard?
It's a good question. I suppose it's a type of wedge. I actually have had one with an angle because I know to make it more of a plantar flexed angle, and I know Dino covered off some of that information in there, because you want your foot in the plantar flex position, not necessarily that equinus. You also another important aspect is you want the heel straight at the back, so you can wedge. And I actually am quite flat-footed, so I actually put a little bit of wedge in the back to make sure my heel's nice and straight. So all that kind of information is, if we can actually provide that to our customers, it's gold.